But look, we have to start in one place, gents, and that is with Manchester City suing and taking unprecedented legal action against the Premier League. Their claim is that the Premier League is stifling them. Their claim is the Premier League is stopping them from growing their revenue. The Premier League is stopping them from winning and becoming one of the best teams in the world. Their claim is they can't compete fairly with these rules, with these laws that are currently in place. So this trial starts Monday, will last 2 weeks to see whether the Premier League has acted unlawfully to stop clubs like City, and predominantly teams like City that are owned with owners from the Gulf. They have claimed that there is bigotry and discrimination from the league towards them because of where their owners are born and bred. What do you make of this, Sam?
I mean, I don't think it's discrimination personally, even as someone from the region myself. I think that's, look, this just is an indicator of red flags right here. Like, this is just the red flags Olympics. You know, basically, I don't know if this is like indirectly an admission of guilt. You know what like, you know what saves this whole thing? From the start, Man City have said we have irrefutable evidence to prove that we are innocent. You know what could have saved us the last 2 years of BS, respectfully? If Man City just showed the whole world the irrefutable evidence, and that's it. Literally, the whole world now sees the irrefutable evidence, and it's all done, and there is no more talk of City cheating or how City built stuff or blah, blah, blah. My problem is this thing keeps prolonging, and there's new stories. I don't think it's discrimination against people from the Middle East at all. I just think it's the way that certain Middle East businesses is run. I'm going to use a YouTube example just so you guys know. This is football. The Football Terrace, Footy Judge Mo, MHF, 4 channels. Imagine Terry buys all 4 channels, and we're all a big part of the Football Terrace. But now I sponsor the Football Terrace, even though I'm part of the Football Terrace. And then Footy Judge Mo sponsors the Football Terrace, even though Footy Judge Mo is part of the Football Terrace. And then MHF sponsors the Football Terrace, even though we're part of the Football Terrace. Is exactly what's happening here. The issue is basically as follows. Look, in the Middle East, specifically in the Gulf, there is no such thing as private companies, private-owned companies. It's all public. It's all government-owned. So everything in the Middle East, specifically in the Gulf, is all government-owned. Like, you know, obviously Mo lived in Saudi Arabia, it's the same thing. So it's not like, you could just go there, run a business by yourself, and that's it, and you can have an airline. Like, it's all funded by the same people, by the same family, by the royal family. So it's essentially you sponsoring yourself. So what basically happens is Terry comes on the Football Terrace and says, Hussam is going to sponsor the Football Terrace with 20 million a year. That's going to be the sponsor. But even though Hussam is under the umbrella of the Football Terrace, that's the kind of where everything stems from here. Because Etihad Airways, Visit Abu Dhabi, everything that kind of sponsors Manchester City from UAE specifically, you obviously have links to the Sheikh and the royal family and all that type of stuff. So this is where it becomes a sticky situation. So basically, if it was allowed and we can just sit here and do whatever we want, Etihad can wake up tomorrow and say, we're going to sponsor Man City with 500 million a year. And now Man City can spend 500 million a year freely. And then it just becomes a massive circus. That's just the unfortunate reality. So I don't necessarily think it's like, it's like...
the thing is, though, in our industry, I own an estate agent. So there's nothing stopping the estate agency from sponsoring me because I'm not competing against anybody. This is the thing as well. If Man City were an independent business competing, yes, within an industry, but not within a competition, they could almost do it. There's nothing that City are doing that is deemed illegal in the UK. What they're doing is against the rules of the competition. The bit that's intriguing for me is they are adamant, and their fans are adamant, that FFP, profit and sustainability laws, and the association act that they're challenging, their view is that the associated parties, regulation, is that they have been put in place almost specifically to stop Manchester City. where I'm really intrigued about this deal is when you look at the facts. So if we look at this from a trophies point of view, since all these rules and laws come in place, nobody has been more successful than Manchester City. So I cannot wait to hear in court how much more success City think they could have won or achieved in that time without any regulations. And I want to, you know, tangibly hear how they think they could have won more than any other English team in English football history in a set period of time. The other element is the financial side of things. Their turnover on their last trading accounts was 5 million less than Real Madrid. They're in second position, but 5 million behind Real Madrid, who everybody would probably agree is the biggest, the most supported football club in the world. City have grown their commercial revenue from 2009 until 2019 with the biggest percentage jump of any of the top five of the traditional top six, 1,177%, to a point then where they're in second place behind Man United. Our understanding now is by looking at their trading accounts over the last 5 years that this is extended beyond Manchester United, and they now bring in the most commercial revenue in the Premier League. Now, of course, a lot of that is based off the success that they've had. Absolutely. So what I'm really intrigued to understand, Mo, is how these rules and regulations, because City fans say it's the red cartel, they're trying to stop City, this is all about hamstringing City. It hasn't worked. So I don't understand why rules are being challenged that haven't stopped them from becoming the best team in the world, the most successful team in England, and surpassing everybody in England with financial income. Now, they're saying they should be earning more. They need to make me understand why they should be earning exponentially more than Real Madrid. That doesn't make sense to me, Mo.
It doesn't. But there is one more thing. If Hossam comes tomorrow and tells me there is a law against stealing from a shop, you go to jail. And Hossam goes to the court and said, that law is illegal. It's unlawful. You should not jail me for stealing from the shop. That means that Hossam, the next day, wants to steal. What is happening is exactly what Hossam is saying. They want to have no law in terms of like the sponsorship. Basically, what they want is they want free assessment of their sponsorship. So basically, these AirPods, right? I have AirPods and Hossam has AirPods. I am only allowed to sell AirPods at market value of £10 or £20. Hossam wants to take his cousin, go to his cousin and say, by the way, I'm going to sell you this AirPod for £200, 10 times what Mo is allowed to sell it. And he says that's legal. That's unfair. Man City, I don't know why they are fighting this rule. This is an incrimination for them. They're really incriminating themselves. Them fighting the law of fair assessment of commercial deals, saying that you really think that your commercial deals aren't legal and you want to fight that law. You want to get inflated commercial deals. You want to inflate your revenue by not having a fair assessment for these commercial deals. This, apart from the 115 charges, this incriminates them in terms of the commercial value. It's very simple. This tells me that they want to steal.
I agree with that theory, Mo. And do you know why I agree with the theory? Because if everything was legitimate, prove it. Follow the rules. So example being this, say they have a company that I haven't heard of. Mo may have heard of it because of your connections to the Middle East. You might have heard of it, Sam. You're from the Middle East. But there's a lot of Middle East companies. And when I went to Qatar for the World Cup, there was like a company that used to deliver all your food, toiletries to your house. I'd never heard of them. But it turns out, not just in Qatar, in the Middle East, they're absolutely gargantuan. So you learn these things, right? If one of these companies says, we want to sponsor Manchester City in an unprecedented deal that's 800 million pounds for an arm to go on the arm of the club, and the independent regulator says that's well above market value, the next closest sponsored deal of that level was 100 million. If that company can turn around with Man City and say the reason we're doing it is because there's X amount of people that we are going to be marketing to, City are watched by this amount of people, they're the biggest team now in the Middle East, they're the biggest team in England, we believe that success is going to continue, we will pump all this money into Man City because we believe over the course of the next however many years we're going to grow our brand in America, we're going to grow our brand in the UK, we're going to grow it in Europe, we're going to grow it in India and Pakistan and Malaysia and China, where the Premier League's huge. Surely this would be part of the documentation and conversations between said company and Man City, because that's how marketing pitches go. That is how they work. We want to sponsor you X amount of money for this exposure because it's going to help us in these markets. if these sponsorship deals are legitimate, as City say they are, that information should be very easily and freely available. That's the bit I'm confused about. And now City fans will say, well, why should we have to prove it? Because in all walks of life, there are third-party adjudicators or valuers or assessors or auditors that come in and audit you. You know, you get buying a house. There's an independent valuer that comes in and values the house. I'm not too sure what they call it in your parts. Well, they call them surveyors here in the UK. They come and survey the house. Yeah, same thing.
Yeah, because I can't buy, for example, my house, if it's worth 200,000, the bank, okay, so here's the deal. The bank sends an independent assessor, it's called assessment, to the house to make sure that the house value is 200,000, because I can be buying this house literally from someone and we can just exchange money and say this house value is 500,000. This is what you're talking about.
And this is something I was saying to yesterday. Now, City will feel, I see these claims of, well, Man United and Liverpool in the past have been able to spend lots of money, and we did. But it was money that at the time was generated by the football club through sponsorships that nobody felt had any connection to the football club. And if there's any historic wrongdoing, it needs to be, go back and look at it. I'm very open to it. I'm not precious about those things. The difference is now we're dealing with sums of money that vastly dwarf the money in football. Even from, you just look at the commercial growth of the top Premier League teams in the last decade, where City have gone from 18 million a year in commercial revenue to 230 million. If we go back another 10 years and another 10 years, you're talking minuscule, minute money in comparison. With this amount of money exchanging hands across multinational organizations, it needs to be independently reviewed. Aside from market value, we need to be checking that everything's above board. There's no money laundering going on. There's no dodging. Listen, all banks have been fined for helping terrorist organizations, laundering money for cartels and, the mafia and people like that. Sometimes it's via duress and they're forced into doing it. Other times people are on the take. All of these things need to be assessed when you're dealing with this type of money. So when I hear, why should we be looked at? Every club should be looked at. This isn't specific to Manchester City. There has to be checks and balances, the same as this idea. And this is why none of it makes sense. And the more I go over it, the more I get confused. If they win this case, City, and clubs in England can spend what they want, do whatever sponsorship deals they want, the English teams that do that won't be able to compete in Europe or in FIFA competitions, because they too have FFP and association rules that are stricter than the Premier League's. So what's the next step? Are you suing FIFA and UEFA at the same time? And then you get into international law, not UK law. So it becomes another interesting thing. And if this lawsuit is successful, how many more lawsuits are going to come out? And this is where this is the one area where I will slam Man City. 10 years ago, just gone, 10 years ago in May, Man United and Liverpool proposed that the distribution of TV rights money should be looked at, should be changed, where the more views your games get, the bigger the audience you bring into the Premier League, the more money you should get. And when they looked at the proposal back then, it meant Liverpool and Man United had an increase per season of about 70 to 80 million pounds.
Yep.
The likes of Chelsea, Arsenal, City, due to the size of their clubs versus ours, they were going to see a reduction of between 30 and 50 million respectively. Man City took part in the democratic process of the Premier League of being part of the 14 plus clubs to vote no against Man United and Liverpool, which Man United and Liverpool never sued anybody over, never said it was unlawful, never took anybody to court. We accepted that it wasn't what everybody wanted to do. This is why I'm so intrigued by this case, because City have voted on multiple other scenarios, financial rules, VAR, 5 substitutes. They've used that same democratic process to benefit their team and got and had rule changes they wanted. Now, because one hasn't gone their way, they're suing. That's the element for me about this whole case that's intriguing, is that what happens with UEFA? What happens if they win? Will historic cases come up? Will there'll be no more checks and balances? Who's going to protect the clubs from bad owners? City's owners might be fantastic, but what about a poor club whose billionaire owner racks up 2 billion in debt and then says, I'm off? Or their country gets sanctioned, or he passes away, unfortunately, and it all falls apart and clubs go out of business. This is going to change the face of English football forever, in my opinion. Win or lose, Man City, because if they lose, it strengthens the Premier League's position, and it almost certainly puts a dent in their bigger case a few months later. It's really crazy what's going on.
Hussam, do you